Well, welcome back. I'm joined by Geoff Banks. You just saw his story, and also his father, James Banks. He is the pastor of Peace Church in Durham, North Carolina, and author of Prayers for Prodigals. And it's good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
James, let's start with you. You've put out this wonderful book, Prayers for Prodigals, and it's your own journey. How long was your journey?
You know, Geoff was addicted for 7 years, and in one form or another. And so, you know, we went through, we did everything that we could, and you get to the point where, what else can you do but pray?
When did you first know he was addicted?
I think that really struck home in high school, a little later on in high school when things got real rough, and you know, he'd gone through one school and got kicked out, and then through another, and eventually we had to homeschool him. And that was the only way he was going to get through. And at that point, we knew we had a problem.
What did you do at that point? I mean, how did you reach out? Did you try to get educated on addiction? Did you?
Well, we did. We had gone through the Duke Intensive Outpatient Rehab actually a couple of times there in Durham where we were, and tried to get educated, you know, tried to learn all we could, but at the same time, there were times where I think I was, you know, I didn't do this kind of stuff when I was a kid, and so I responded in anger, I responded legalistically, and that wasn't the best example.
I didn't raise you to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I imagine you had self-doubt along the way.
Yeah.
Well, did I do something?
Exactly. You look at yourself and you think, you know, where did I go wrong? What did I do? And I remember talking with Geoff about that one time, and he said, Dad, you know, it wasn't what you did. I made my own choices, basically. But still, you know, it's a burden to carry. And the beautiful thing is that that's where God meets us. And that's certainly what he did for us.
Tell us about the journey of prayer. I imagine in the first years of this 7-year journey, it was, let's claim the promise of God. Let's hold on to the promise. Let's declare victory.
Right.
And then it went to, that's not happening.
You're so right. I mean, there's this back and forth. You know, you think that okay, it's going to happen, and you learn not to depend on your feelings. My wife and I used to have this saying that was, today was a good day, when we went through a day and there wasn't any drama with Geoff. You know, the phone doesn't ring in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. And
I think that's a story a lot of people don't know. When you're living with addiction, there's always drama.
Well, there is, and you know, here at this point, he's living in another city, and there's only so much we can do. But we know we have to stay in his life, because if we don't, then who's there? You know, and so we've got to keep the communication open with him. But
I think that's a lesson a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
And they talk about tough love. They talk about, well, let's force a bottom. And not realizing with addiction, bottom can be death.
Well, that love has got to be tough on us as well. You know, it's got to be that kind of thing that says, I'm going to love him no matter what. You know, sometimes we talk about tough love and it's like, well, go away, kid, you bother me. You know, I mean, that's kind of the human
motive. That's not love.
That's not love. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at what point did you know you had victory?
Well, we really knew we had victory after Geoff had gone through Christian Recovery House, and there was one particular day, it was interesting, we went to get Geoff a pair of shoes. He was back visiting us in Durham, and he says, you know, here's something I really want you to listen to, and he plugs his phone into the radio in the car. I'm thinking, great, you know, here's another song I'm going to have to theologically critique, you know. And it turns out to be this sermon from a former heroin addict about the difference Jesus had made in setting him free. And my wife and I are both sitting, Geoff's in the back seat, my wife and I are both sitting in the front seat. You know, we're doing our best to just fight back the tears. And that day I realized, wow, you know, this was something only God could do. And I think so often we had tried to do it in our own strength, that we needed to come to that place of just being, you know, desperate. And in His mercy, He met us and gave us what we needed.
And that's the key. That's the key to recovery, is that surrender. Yeah. I can't do this. And it's not about willpower. It's all about Him.
Yeah.
We've been doing a lot of talking about you. Let's talk to you.
Sure.
And I think prodigals don't understand what they do to the family. When did it dawn on you what was going on?
Not until much later. Not until I didn't realize the effect that my actions in my life had made until I had cleaned up, you know, because whenever you're in it, you're so focused on kind of just surviving and getting your next fixed and getting the next day that you're not thinking about anybody else. And I never meant to hurt, you know, I always looked at, you know, my parents' position as a position of ignorance. Like, they don't really know how it is. They don't really know what's going on. They just think it's that bad. They just think it's, you know, this crazy lifestyle, and I have it all together, and they don't realize it. So I always looked at them as kind of this, you know, this ignorant party and the whole thing. But now looking back, I'm like, man, I was lost. And it wasn't until cleaning up that I can look back and see how it affected them. And I still do that, where it's still, you know, 5 years later, almost 5 years later, I see, you know, places where my actions had an effect on people that sometimes I didn't even realize it.
When you were using, were you living the dream or the lie that, you know, this wasn't really you, that you could stop? Yeah, definitely. I thought that my like recurring thing, even whenever I was older, meaning, you know, 20, 21, I always thought that I would like grow out of it one day, and that one day I just wouldn't want to use anymore, that it just wouldn't be an interest anymore, and that I could just kind of have a good time now, and later on I'll just kind of float on out. Okay, yeah, and that obviously never happened. You know, it wasn't, you know, I did eventually make it out, but it was never this kind of, well, you know, guess I'll go home now. Yeah, it always gets worse. Yeah, exactly. It always gets worse. Yeah. At what point did you figure out that you were actually lying to yourself? That's a good question. I think whenever I really realized the depth of my addiction was I'd gotten in this, I had taken my girlfriend at the time, I'd taken her car and taken some money from her, and I'd gone to get my fix in the morning. I used in the car and took off, needle still in my arm, and I passed out at the wheel, and I hit a power pole. And I remember waking up in the hospital not knowing what happened, and having this like feeling of doom, like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I remember that kind of being the moment where I realized like the gravity of my situation and like the effect that it's had on not only myself but other people, you know. What's your dream now? Man, I don't know. You know, I love what I do now, being able to I've always thought that I would be in ministry whenever it comes to addiction and things like that, but I've ended up in student ministry with high schoolers at Port State Church in Wilmington, and it's been so awesome to realize that now, like, for the most part, it's getting to them before they go down that path, for most of them, and being able to love them there. And it's kind of this proactive thing instead of reactive, and that's really where God has me now. And I think it's somewhere where I'm going to be for a while, is with students. So. And that would be a good thing. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that would be a good thing. Yeah, mold them, shape them, and yeah. People often look at the youth pastor thing and say, someday you'll be a real pastor, but it's like, man, that's where... You're a real pastor now. Yeah, it's like that's where the battle's at, you know. And the battle is right at that age, right when they're getting ready to leave home. Right. And they think suddenly, well, I'm going to be free, or I'm going to be whatever. That's the time to really cement in. No, you need God in your life. Yeah, so that's been an honor to be able to do that, and like you know, I never know what God has for me next, you know, so it's kind of just walking out the next steps. Yeah. But making disciples, that's a good thing. Yeah. All right, well, the book is called Prayers for Prodigals, and if you have a prodigal that you're praying for, all you have to do is get a copy of this book. It's called Prayers for Prodigals. It's available wherever books are sold or on Amazon. And if you want to hear more from Geoff and James, check out our Facebook and Instagram page for a web-exclusive interview. Thanks for being with us. Yeah. Thank you.